In this video, artist Ken Farris gives a lesson in perspective to the members of Northside Art Association. Ken Farris paints with acrylics, oils, watercolors, and colored pencils, often painting on plein air when he can. Ken is also an experienced craftsman in the art of wood and metal forming. In 2005, he exhibited his work at the Augusta Haus Art Gallery while serving on their board of managers. Since 2006, Ken has been a resident artist at Framations Art Gallery. Learn more about artist Ken Farris at www.kenfarris.com. Following are a few selected video clips from Ken Farris's lecture.
It's hard to look at something and paint it. You have the temptation, or I do. I paint what I think I'm seeing and not what I'm seeing. And so it's a good habit if you can force yourself to do it, to really observe what you're painting. If you are going to paint representational paintings and you want them to appear professional, you really need to get the understanding of linear perspective, because nothing makes a painting look amateurish in my mind quicker than seeing a building that the perspective is off on. Aerial perspective is just as important as linear perspective, and that is taking into account the effect of the light shining through the air and the particles of moisture in the air and what it does to the view, and also how colors are affected by distance. The warm colors advance toward the viewer and the cool colors recede. And so as you're looking at the mountains in the distance, the cool colors are there because all the yellows and oranges and warm colors have dropped out, and you see the mountains or the distance without the warm colors in there, so they become blue and purple and the different colors that you see.
How do you get the point of the roof drawn in?
Okay.
On your linear.
Yeah, and that's a good question.
I'm
glad you asked the question, because that's one of the things I had wanted to point out. After you have your two vanishing points, and so you create, with your two vanishing points, you create yourself this rectangular surface, and then you draw an X from corner to corner, and where that X crosses is the center of that system, and you draw a straight line up, and that brings you up to how you want to make it to get your peak of the roof in the center of the building. Of course, if you measured it with the ruler, it's much shorter on the one side than the other, but to your eye it looks centered. If you're drawing a house or are going to paint a house, I recommend that you draw the house on your canvas without the aid of this, and then you go back and you find your horizon, and you pick which surface of this house you think is the most accurate. You project out from there and get your vanishing points, and then go ahead and draw it in with rulers to check and see how close you got it with your eye. But I do recommend that you go back and actually use projected lines if you're going to paint a picture of a house or a building, because when the perspective is off, the artist will be the last one to see it. Everybody else will realize that something wrong, but because you did it and you did it based on your eyeballing the thing, you'd be the last one to see it. And it really does hurt a painting to have the perspective off. I'm not suggesting that you have to do your paintings with a T-square and straight edges, but it doesn't hurt to check them out. It doesn't hurt to check them out, and then you go back and paint it. I do think my cactus needs a face on it, because I think somebody just told him to stick them up. But the whole idea is, if you take the linear perspective and the aerial perspective and put those two together, you can really start to give the image of the impression that there's depth to it. Another thing that really helps a painting get depth, I think, is when you're finished with it and you put the frame on it. Then you're looking through a window. Basically, how you get these shadows in exactly the right position is by dropping a line straight down to the surface, and then from there you project another line out through the item, and you project another line. Now you have to do this on your drawing. You project another line from the light down across, and that would come from here down across this and out to the point. And that puts that at the right angle. And it's very strange that even though I'm doing this with a light source that's 3 feet away, if you're out in the woods and you're in a situation where you see the trees and the shadows from the trees are coming from the sun, and the sun's 93 million miles away, it still fans out like this. Anytime you have a change in direction, a plane changing directions, there's going to be a change in the value of the light on that surface, and I hope it shows that way. I hope you can see them. And theoretically, at least, if you have a dark surface, this should be a darker surface right here. If you have a dark surface and a light surface, frequently the darkest part of the dark surface is going to be right here at the edge of the light one. On the shadows are darkest right at the base of any object that's casting the shadow. As it moves out, it gets lighter and the edges get fuzzier. And I'm sure that's because there's opportunity for a lot more reflected light to affect the outcome on it. Anytime you see a reflected light, the surface that is nearest the light to you is where the highlight is going to appear. Highlight in the human eye is one of the important parts of making your eye look alive and realistic. There's a highlight on the eye, but then there's also down below and across from where the light is shining, there will be a little lighter spot. That little glow, along with the highlight on the iris, are very important. Black is a color that I don't use very often. I do own tubes of black paint, but mainly when I paint, I mix I mix my colors to get a near black, but the one place that's good to use black is for the iris. And in nature, the only place that there is a true white is the sun, and you don't want to look at that. But I will use a little dot of white for that, and so I believe that a little dot of white, pure white, and a black iris is important to make that eye look lifelike. I paint primarily with the basic yellow, red, and blue, and you more or less can mix any of those two colors together, a certain amount of any of those two colors, and then mix the third one in, and you can get the black with any of them. The reason I started using the primary colors is I wanted to learn to mix color, and I was finding it difficult, so I just put everything else away but my primaries and started fighting it. And the one thing, the color wheel, I always, when I would go through the books and I would get to the part about the color wheel, I thought, that's some kind of technical stuff, I don't care about that, and I would go on and past it and never stop and look at it. But the color wheel is probably the most important part of all of it to me. The surface that's nearest to the light will be the highlight, unless on a convex part. On a concave part, it's going to be the surface that's the farthest from a light. So if you have a metal cup or something that you're looking into, you're going to have a highlight on this side, and there'll be another highlight on the inside that's just directly opposite it. If you're doing a painting of something like a sculptured faucet handle or something that has a very non-uniform shape, there's going to be highlights all over the place. And so what I recommend is have the object that you're wanting to put the highlights on and look at it until you study it and really see where the highlights are. Nail them down that way. The hardest part of painting for me is painting what I'm seeing and not what I expect to see. I think that is of all of this is learn to look at it and really see it and look past what, we think the sky's blue and the trees are green, and that's how we paint it, and the sky was pink and the trees were brown or something. I was saying these same words in a class at Michael's, and I was drawing a book, and I was telling my student, look at it and draw what you see. And I drew a modern book, and the one I was looking at was one with a rounded edge on it. I caught myself before I was done, and she thought I was using it as an example. But I was really painting or drawing what I thought I was seeing. And it's a tough thing.
Northside Art Association is a nonprofit arts organization focused in Florissant, Missouri, that serves local artists through community exposure, networking, education, and peer interaction.